Hey guys, what's up? This is Kat and welcome back to the bookish side of me. So, this is somewhat a different kind of video than the usual that I put out, but I just don't want to blubber so much because we're going to talk about 29 books. Anyway guys, before that, please do follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at herbookishside. And also I've put some important links on the description box below, so please make sure you check that out before you continue with the video or after watching this video. So anyway, if you've been following me for the last couple of months, you will know that I'm not really posting my wrap-up video on time, so I am very behind, and don't worry guys, I'm very aware of that. So for this video, I thought of just doing the wrap-up for March and April. So without further ado, let's get started. So in March, I have read a total of 12 books with 3,942 pages with an average rating of 4.38. If you've watched my January and February wrap-up, you will probably notice that I have read so much in March. So the first book that I've read in March is actually a reread of my favorite YA contemporary of all time, and that is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. If you don't know yet, I am a big fan of John Green, but I can say that I love all his books because I don't. So this is one of the few books that I love from John Green, but this, if you don't know anything about this yet, is about two young lovers named Hazel Grace and Augustus Waters who met in a cancer kid support group, and yeah, they fell in love. So this book is again my favorite YA contemporary romance of all time, and I read it this year after 7 years because I want to know if I will still love this book, and I'm very glad that I still did. I still cried even though I know what's going to happen, and I still give this 5 stars out of 5. The next book that I've read in March is actually a first book in a very hyped up series, but I haven't read it yet because what's new? The one that I'm talking about is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. If you don't know about this one yet, this is the first book in the Infernal Devices series or trilogy by Cassandra Clare. So this is a Shadowhunters novel that is actually a historical fantasy because it's set in 1880s. I can't remember, but if you know me, you know that I'm not really good at describing the synopsis or the overview of the book. So if you're interested what this is about, please do check it out on Goodreads. But I gave this book 4 stars out of 5. I enjoyed it, I liked it, and I want to continue the series, but it's just that I struggled a little bit in reading this. But still, this is a good book. The third book that I've read in March is actually a romance novel of my former favorite author of all time, and that is Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. If you've been watching my previous videos, I have mentioned that I really love Colleen Hoover's books and I love the romance that she writes, but I just begun to realize that I'm actually outgrowing this author because there's a lot of issues about the books that she writes. But anyway, before I've decided about that, I've already bought this book and I read it. This actually is about a relationship between a mother and a daughter and about their tragic, forbidden love stories. I wasn't really expecting to like this book, but I did, and I gave it 4 stars out of 5. The next book that I've read in March is another John Green book, and this is his most recent one. It's Turtles All the Way Down, again by John Green. And as I've said, there's just a few number of books that he writes that I really loved, and this is one of them. So this is a YA contemporary that is not really about romance, but about a protagonist who has a mental illness named Asa. And for me, I love this book because this is actually a character driven book. There's a lot of things that happen here, but I still believe that the strong point of this book is about the protagonist and how she battles with mental illness. However, content warning, this can be triggering for some people who are currently experiencing anxiety. Again, I really love this book and I gave it 5 stars out of 5. The next book that I've read in March is actually a non-fiction, and this one, I just found this on my shelf, and to be honest, I don't know where I got this book, but this is Nice Girls Don't Change the World by Lynn Hybels. I don't know. This is a non-fiction about a girl named Lynn Hybels and how she thinks that really nice girls don't really change the world, but badass girls and empowered women and independent women and women who don't conform with the society. This is a good book because it is about her experiences being a girl or being a woman in a family, in her own family, even in the church. I gave this book 3 stars out of 5, and just a disclaimer, 3 stars is not really a bad rating for me. It means that I enjoy the book, but it's not my favorite. The next book that I've read in March is actually an ebook, and that is An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. I've read this for a book club of the Spill the Books book club, and it was very spontaneous, so I just grabbed the ebook and read it on my device. If you don't know anything about it yet, this is a first book of a quartet series, and I give this book 4 stars out of 5. I freaking love the setting, the plot, the world building, and the characters of this book. Alright, I'm not gonna talk about the synopsis of this book because I suck at that, so I'm going to continue the series for the next few months. Alright, the next books that I've read in March is my favorite trilogy of all time, and unfortunately I don't have the first book yet because I originally have the paperback, but I gave it to a friend, so I'm trying to collect the hardback and I'm still finding the first book. I already have The Catching Fire and The Mockingjay, so we're still looking for The Hunger Games. So I've decided to reread the series this year because of this book. This came out last May and I've read this in March so I could prepare for the prequel, but we're not gonna talk about this. If you want to know more about my thoughts about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I have a reading vlog and a book review of this book in whole video. I'm going to link it on the iCard and on the description box below, so please make sure that you check that out after this video. But anyway, going back to the trilogy, I reread all of them and I still love them. It still live up to my expectations about this series, and as usual, I'm not even surprised. Catching Fire is my favorite book among the 3. If I could only give this book 10 stars out of 5, I would. It was amazing. Oh, by the way, I still gave the trilogy 5 stars out of 5 because that's how I love Katniss and Peeta and everything in that world. After I read the trilogy, I started with a new series, which is actually a graphic novel, which I don't have, so I read it in Webtoon, and that is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I actually read the first volume in March, but don't worry, I have finished the series until April. But for this one, I super love Nick and Charlie, and I absolutely adore all the characters in this book. I was actually planning just to read this series because I've heard a lot of good things about it, but boy, it became my favorite graphic novel of all time. I super love Nick and Charlie, and if you can see me right now, I can't stop smiling every time I remember this too. Just my heart is pumping. Obviously, I gave this book 5 stars out of 5. one of the easiest 5 stars I ever gave this year. Let's move on to the books that I've read in April. Now, if I read 12 books in March, I upped my game in April and read 17 books with 5,581 pages with the average rating of 4.35. So for the first book that I've read in April is actually one of my most favorite reads of this year, and that is The Reader by Bernhard Schlink. I've also found another gem for the month of April, and that is The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini or Hosseini, I don't know. But this book, guys, if I can only shout right now, scream at you to read this book if you haven't yet. I will, because this book changed my life. Like, literally changed my life about about Afghanistan, about Khaled Hosseini. He is now my newest favorite author for this year. Anyway, guys, The Kite Runner is actually a historical fiction, and I've been meaning to read this for the longest time, but it is just now that I found an audiobook that is narrated by the author, so I was really interested, and that's why I read this book. So as I was saying, this is a historical fiction and it follows a friendship between Amir and Hassan, and this is set in the 1970s during the war of Afghanistan and the Russians. So this book is, I don't know how to explain this to you, but this freaking book wrecked me emotionally. Like, this is one of the books that I will never forget in my entire life. That's it. That's all I can say. If you haven't read this book yet, please do. It was really, really good. Obviously, I gave this book 5 stars out of 5, and this is my favorite book this year, or probably my favorite book of all time. I don't know, but I'll never forget this. I hope that you would read this. Please read. Alright, the next book that I've read for the month of April is Just Like Someday. I have a physical copy, but I ended up giving it to someone else, and that's it. There's Someone Inside Your House by Stephanie Perkins, and according to the overview and the synopsis of the book, this is a horror story about a serial killer and house invasions and all that stuff that's supposed to be scary. And I don't know, this book just, I'm so freaking mad about this book. Like, I don't want to talk about it, but I gave this book 2 stars out of 5. It was so fucking lame. That's all I can say for that. Alright, the next book that I've read in April is another one that I've read in ebook because I don't have a physical copy, and it's actually available online. This is a Filipino book called Bagay Tayo by Jerry B. Gracio. So Bagay Tayo is a non-fiction novel about the author's love story with the greatest love of his life, Pitbull. And I'm not kidding you, that's the nickname of Pitbull. But his name is Mong, I think. This is an adult romance because I'm gonna tell you, this is non-fiction, this is true story, and it will not give you that kilig that the fiction novels or romance novels can give you, but this one is so real, so realistic, and so relatable. I love this book so much. I gave this book 5 stars out of 5, and I was actually looking for a physical copy of this book, but unfortunately I think that they are not printing it anymore, Hopefully someday. Alright, the next book that I read in April is actually a YA contemporary, and that is On the Come Up by Angie Thomas. Just like Khaled Hosseini, Angie Thomas is becoming one of my favorite authors for this year because of the first book that I've read from her, which is The Hate You Give, and this is the second one. And can I just say that she writes beautiful stories about the Black community. So anyway, On the Come Up again is a YA contemporary, and this book follows a young rapper named Bree. Bree is your usual 16-year-old angsty teen who wants to do everything by herself, and that's why sometimes things are not really that good because of her stupid decisions. But still, I love this book, and the thing that I enjoyed about On the Come Up was when I actually listened to the audiobook while reading the physical book because it was amazing. If you haven't read this one yet, I suggest that you go try the audiobook while reading the physical book, or just try the audiobook itself. It's still good. By the way, I gave this book 5 stars out of 5. It was fantastic. The next book that I've read is In 5 Years by Rebecca Sirle, and this one I read for a buddy reading or a read along with some of my Filipino bookish friends. And this is contemporary. I already forgot what is it about. If you are interested what this book is all about, please do check it out on Goodreads because I already forgot. But what I remembered about this book is that I expected to be romantic and will give me like fluffy feelings and all that. But to be honest, I was disappointed about this book. I gave this 3.5 stars because there are some parts that I really enjoyed, some elements like the friendship in the story was really fascinating. But I was disappointed because they're trying to sell this as a romance novel, which is not. Anyway, let's move on to the next book that I've read, which is a first book of a fantasy. And I read this for the Stay Home Reading Rush readathon that happened in April, and that is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. The next books that I read for the rest of April are all ebooks. So let's start first with the one that I buddy read with a lot and a bunch of my bookish friends in the Philippines, and that is We Are the Ants by Sean David Hutchinson. This is a YA contemporary with sci-fi elements, kinda. So, as I've said, I buddy read this book with lots of my Filipino bookish friends, and we had book discussions for this book for a couple of days, and it was so amazing. The book discussion was one of the best experiences I ever had this year. But when it comes to this book, I liked it. I liked the writing style of Sean David Hutchinson. I also like the characters in the story, but it's just that there's something that's lacking in this book that I was looking for. I had too many questions, and some of them weren't really answered in the ending or the conclusion of the book, and so I gave this book 4 stars out of 5. Just a quick content warning for this book. There is like suicide here, self-harm, bullying, sexual assault at some point, and if you are interested in reading this book, I suggest that you go ahead and check the website of the author for the complete list of the trigger warnings. The next books that I read are books that made my heart go crazy because it's at the second and the third volume of The Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. As I've said in my March wrap-up that I just can't help but fall in love with Charlie and Nick. I both give this 5 stars out of 5. I can't express how much I love this graphic novel. So you guys, if you haven't read this one yet, it's available in Webtoon. It's free. The next book that I've read after The Heartstopper is a thriller, but a YA contemporary thriller, and that is Sadie by Courtney Summers. This one I listened to the audiobook because I've heard so much good reviews about the audiobook of this thriller. And I tried it for like a few minutes and I loved it. So that's why I ended up finishing this book in what? Less than 24 hours? I already forgot. But anyway, Sadie is about a girl that is missing, and there is like this radio host that is very interested in that story. So he follows Sadie and look for her as well. I was really interested in the story. I was invested, but also just like the others, I think that this lacks something, especially in the ending or in the conclusion part. So with that, I gave this book 4 stars out of 5. Alright, the next 2 books that I read is actually poetry books, which is the first poetry books I've read this year, and I'm just so in love with these books. The first one is Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds, and the second one is For Everyone by Jason Reynolds, of course. So again, these books are poetry books. I gave Long Way Down 5 stars and For Everyone 4 stars because they are just so good. Jason Reynolds is also one of my favorite authors this year. I freaking love his books with all of my heart, with all of my soul. That's it, guys. That ends my April wrap up, and I was really so tired talking to you in this video. Oh my god, my throat is aching, so I have to end this video right now. Anyway, that's it for this wrap up video. Please do tell me, guys, if you want more wrap up videos like this, because I can do this every now and then, or you like the normal setup wherein you'll see my very expressive face when I'm annoyed, or when I'm about to cry, or when I'm super kilig. So let me know in the comment box below which kind of wrap up do you like with a face or with no face, because I'm annoying. So for now, I'm gonna end this video here. I'm so freaking tired. I have to go now. Just take care of yourself and your family. Stay healthy, stay safe, and remember, the world is yours for the reading. Bye, and see you on the next one.